Hey there, welcome back to the channel. So today we're working on an adjustable standing desk that I am building for myself. And so this is something I found on Grizzly at random. I wasn't even looking for anything like this, but I saw it and it was on clearance for, I think it was like $220, which I think the original price was 450. So it was a really good price. And I had actually been wanting a standing desk or an adjustable desk for a while, just because I do for my daily um, day-to-day job. I work at a computer, and so it can be annoying to sit for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. So it's just nice to be able to adjust the desk and stand up for a little while if you want to. And so yeah, that's basically the reason I wanted a standing desk. But they are very expensive. If anybody's looking for decent quality standing desks, I mean, you can get a $200 one from Amazon for dirt cheap, but what's the quality going to be like? So, not that great. It's certainly not going to be as good as this one. This frame is very heavy. I think the package is it was like 70 pounds or so. It's pretty thick gauge steel that it's built out of and pretty decently well made. And the weight limit is I think 550 pounds, which is quite significant. Like if you were to try to get a standing adjustable desk uh, with that kind of weight limit, I mean they're $1,000 plus. And if you want one with a nice top, like the one I'm gonna put on here, it's like $2,000. So at any rate, me doing all this myself for a few $100s is just so much nicer, so much better, and I get to customize the top how I want it. So as you saw, I just took out the part for that's going to attach to the top and put it together. And now I'm just going through my witch stash of lumberyard materials to figure out what I want to build this with. Um, my original thought was possibly cedar, but using cedar for a tabletop of any kind is not ideal just because it's a soft wood and it's going to dent and ding and scratch really easily. And it'll look amazing, but it's just not ideal. So I dug through to see kind of what I had, and essentially I do have more than enough oak to. I could have done the entire top out of oak if I wanted to, but I wanted something that was going to be a little more unique. So I ended up getting a few different varieties. Uh, Oak is going to be the main, kind of like the main wood that's used, but then there's going to be some cherry, a piece of cherry on the one edge and a piece of cherry on the other edge, and then in the middle there will be some walnut. So it'll be some nice color differences and species differences. Um, so yeah, it's I was pretty excited to get started on this. So what I'm doing now is just cutting down one of the oak boards. I have two of these oak boards that are I think were about 8 inches, 8.5 inches wide, and so I just needed one of them for this project. So my chop saw could not cut the entire board, so I just used my little handsaw here to finish it off. And so that one board is enough to do both pieces that I needed. And then now I'm just cutting one of the cherry. There's two different strips of cherry that I'm using. This one, which is very unique looking because it's got multiple, it's very light on one end and the other part it gets dark. And then this piece is very cool swirling grain pattern. So I wanted to use this piece as well. And now it begins the journey of the jointer. And I'm not going to show all of this. It took probably an hour or more to do all of these jointing and everything. So the cherry was bowed pretty bad, so it took a lot to get straight. And the oak was pretty straight already, so it didn't take much. Um, and then whenever we go to see the walnut later, it took a lot. It was very bowed, it was very curvy, so it had a lot of work to be done on it to get it nice and usable. So yeah, here's the oak piece, and the oak was it needed a little bit more planing because it was pretty rough on the flat side, but not not a big deal. Just a little more time on the planer. And in fact, I think using the DeWalt planer, this is the first video I'm showing it in. I recently got it, and it's been very nice. Actually, I think you got to see it very briefly on a previous video whenever I built the cutting board. So you did get to see it very briefly for that because I used it to just plane the top where the glue out happened. And then here you can see this is after doing the jointer. So one side on the edge and one side on the flat side is nice and clean. And next we are going to take it over to the table saw to get or actually I think we're going to take it to the planer first. So yeah, there's just more of the shavings to dump out. And yeah, we're taking it to the new planer that I got recently. So this thing makes things a lot nicer. Instead of having to use the jointer I have is a combo unit, like it can be switched to planer mode, but it's just it's a lot better for me for workflow and everything just to have a separate planer. This is also wider too. This is a 13-inch planer versus that combo unit is only going to do up to 8 inches wide. So again, just workflow wise, it's a lot better to have a separate planer. And that was always the plan anyways. Like I got the combo unit because like at first I would only have like one unit to do both, and I couldn't afford to get a planer and a separate jointer, so I just got the combo unit and was great to start for the first couple years. But the plan was always to get a separate planer. So here we go, taking it through the planer. I'm not showing all this, but it does take a little bit of time to go through, and you just do each board one at a time so that they're all the same thickness, and you keep them all the same thickness the whole time. Obviously, since you're doing a tabletop, they all have to be exactly the same. So do all four of them, adjust the depth or the height, and then do the four of them again, and keep going and going and going until you have a nice enough finish and it's taken all the defects out and all that. So now is where we take it to the table saw and we cut that last edge and just get it squared up, parallel, and nice to work with. And this is the new table saw as well that I got recently. Works great, love it. And then you just hit it on the jointer one last time on that edge that you just cut on the table saw, just to get it nice and smooth and perfect. And this stuff is all essential and kind of critical whenever you're edge jointing into a tabletop, because you want that joint to be as perfect as possible so that when you go to glue up, there's no like uneven gaps and stuff like that. So you really want it to look nice. And now we have the walnut, and it's a very rough cut board that I bought, um, but it will turn out amazing. I really love seeing the transformation, especially when you see something this rough sawn and bowed and nasty looking. And I love seeing the process of getting it turned into such a nice piece of wood to work with. And see the bow, it was significant. I think that was about a 3/4 inch bow. It was pretty bad. It took a lot of work on the jointer to get it flat and straight, but again, it's so worth it. Once you see the end result, or at least the result once it's done with the jointer and planer, it is just beautiful. Walnut's one of my favorite woods to work with because it's just, to me, it looks amazing. I just love the way it looks. So yeah, as you can imagine, it took quite a bit of time on here, um, and then a lot of time getting the edge done once this part was done. And I'm loving the new the new spot where my jointer is, the new table that I built recently for it. Works pretty well. And here it is, done with the jointer, at least on that side. Very nice looking. And now we gotta do the edge. Also took a while. So again, I'm not showing all the recording for all of these steps because otherwise the video would be 2 hours long probably, even with it going super fast in the recording. And see, that just looks so good. It's not even it's not even finished yet, but it just looks amazing. I really love that transformation. And yes, that was all from the walnut. That much. Oh man, it took a lot. And a planer. And we have to get that down to the same size as the other ones. The walnut was thicker, but it was also rougher. So it took a lot more processing to get it just to a state of being able to work with it. And then once I got it through here, time to cut the last edge. And then do the jointer. And at this point, I measured to see what my what I wanted my table width to be, my total, and then I just cut this strip down to be the width of the final, what it would add up to with all the other strips I'd already cut. There was a crack in the walnut, and so it split right there at the very last end, which I figured it would. No big deal. Just flip it around, cut it, and it's good to go. And then joints it on that piece, on both sides, or maybe just the one side. And now I'm cutting all the boards to the exact length they need to be for the table. Which it was only trimming off a little tiny bit of each of them, but it's a lot easier to do it now versus later, like after it's glued up. Something this big, I prefer to do now, like before you glue it up. If it's something small, like the cutting board I built, it's no problem to do that after because you can just take it on a table saw really easily. But something this big, you'd have to use like a circular saw or something, and it's not gonna make a clean edge, and then you got a mess to deal with. So it's just a lot easier getting them cut exactly to length. And there you go. And it's not glued up yet. It's just mocked up, but that's the idea. That's what it's gonna look like when it's done. And now that they're all perfectly lined up, I'm going to make marks every 6, 8 inches or so because we're going to biscuit joint this together. So the marks are there so I know where to drill out for the biscuits. And then I also number all the boards as well on one edge so that I don't get them out of order because it's essential that you keep everything exactly the way it is once you start doing this because the biscuits they need to line up correctly and everything, so it makes it easier. You don't have to try to remember which board goes where. It's especially when you've got boards that are the same, like those two oak boards look pretty much exactly the same, so it would be very easy to mix those up if you didn't label it. And now we're just cutting all the biscuit joint or pockets. And sometimes you just need to sand up because there'll be like a little bit of a burr left over, and you just sand that out because you don't want anything like that staying because it'll keep the joint from closing together properly. And also, it should go without saying, and I've talked about biscuit jointing on my channel before, because I've biscuit jointed so many things over the years. But you have to make sure that you biscuit joint the same side, like the same flat side. Like, so if you were to biscuit joint and then flip it on end and do like the opposite edge, it's hard to explain. I guess I could do it easier if I could show you in the video, but I have explained this before on my channel. And basically, you have to biscuit joint measuring from the same side. So basically, when you draw the lines, that's just the side you keep on the top. May or may not make sense. Apologies. So now we're ready to glue, and this I think took 40 minutes to glue up. It's a decent amount of pieces, and just takes time to get the glue and the biscuits kind of there. And I always use wax paper over my clamps because getting glue on the clamps is a nightmare to deal with, and wax doesn't help it. Like I've waxed, like one time I tried it with waxing the clamps, and I put a lot of wax on there and it didn't do anything. The glue still stuck to it super bad, and it was a nightmare to get off. So wax paper seems to be the best thing that works for me. It just is never an issue, and it's not expensive, so that's just what I like to use. And so I get the two outside. I start from the outside and work my way in, basically, on these. This is the most stressful part of the entire build for me, anyways, is the glue up part, because it takes so much time, and you're always worried that stuff is going to dry too fast for you. But it worked out pretty well. It was not a problem. And using parallel clamps for this is, I wouldn't say essential, but it definitely helps keep everything lined up properly. And then once I get it clamped down with the parallel clamps, I'll add two more pipe clamps to the middle section just to get that whole area clamped down really well as well. Because this, if I only had those two parallel clamps, it would not really be enough. You want some more clamping toward the middle there. And no, I did not use any spacers. Sometimes you'll use like a spacer between the clamp and the wood, like if you're really worried about it messing up the edge. But these are pretty hardwoods, and it didn't do anything to the edge. And you also don't want to like clamp down like ultra hard. Like you need to make sure it's clamped down decently hard, but you also don't want to just go crazy with it either. So I guess it just takes experience to kind of know what feels right. But for me, I wasn't using any spacers between the clamps and the wood on that because there was no point, and it did not make any mark at all in the wood. So if you're using softwoods, like if you're using something like cedar, it would absolutely dent the cedar if you tried to do that. And so that's where you would want to use like a spacer, like a piece of wood that's wider, just to spread the load of that clamp to prevent that. And here I'm just taking off the glue from the table with the chisel, vacuuming that up, because keeping your workspace clean as you go is, for me, essential. Like, I don't like working inside of a mess, so I just do that as I go, keep the stuff nice and clean. Messes tend to stress me out. And now I just begin the process of getting the glue off the bottom. This is the bottom side. The top side doesn't really have any of this kind of work I need to do. It does have some glue squeeze out, but not much. It'll just be taken off with the sander. But the bottom edge does, and always will have glue squeeze out to deal with. And so to me, it's easiest just to handle with the chisel. If I had a $5,000 planer that could do something that was 25 inches deep or wide, then yeah, planer would make this super nice and easy. But I'm not a I don't have that kind of equipment, so I've got to work with what I've got, which is chisel this off and then spend hours sanding it essentially, because this is not something I want to use a hand plane. No, sorry, I don't have a hand plane like a manual hand plane that would work for this. Once you get the chisel or once you've chiseled off all of the glue, but I don't have one of those, and I do have an electric hand plane, but that's not. Uh, I'm not using that on this because it will. It's very possible that it will chip out the wood, and especially the cherry. And I'm not taking that risk. Like I'll spend 4 hours sanding versus taking the risk of it chipping out just to save 4 hours. You know what I mean? Like it's not worth the risk to me of the chip out and then making a big hole and nasty mess to deal with. So it does take a lot of time to sand these down and make them nice, but that's just again that's what I've got. Maybe someday I can have a nice big planer, but right now I don't. So now I begin the sanding process, and it took, like I said, probably about 4 or 5 hours on this one side to get it nice and flat. And even though it's the bottom, I still like making it nice. Just that's just me. Uh, I wanted it decent. I also end up putting finish on the bottom, not as required, but again, it's I'm doing this one time, and I'm just gonna do it decently good quality. So that's just the way I like to do most things. Overkill. So yeah, this was a few hours this day, and then I had to finish it up the next day. And then I think coming up is gonna be the following weekend. Oh wait, that's right. I forgot. So once you do the orbital sander, I always take it down the rest of the way with a hand sanding block. Otherwise, you get the swirly marks that everyone talks about. So if you want something to look nice, this is what you got to do. It takes a lot of time, effort, but in the end, it makes it look very good. So I think on the orbital sander, I started with 80, then 120, then 220, and then here I start with 240 by hand and then go up to 320. And also the edges by hand. So all the edges all the way around. And then I took the router with an 1/8 inch round over bit, and this is the bottom side. So I only needed an eighth of an inch. I just wanted it kind of have the edge knocked down to where it wasn't just a sharp edge. And so that this is all I needed for the bottom. And I'll show a little bit of a close up of the edge here in just a second. There you go. Really nice. This edge it doesn't really focus on too well, but you get the idea. It's a very nice rounded over edge. And I just took the sand, I think it was 220 grit sandpaper, and just kind of cleaning up just a little bit more on the edges and rounding over the corners as well, because I want the corners rounded over and not sharp. So I did that by hand. Yeah, and then so this is doing this corner and then cleaning up a little bit of this piece of cherry that was a little bit had a little bit of spots that needed to be cleaned up a little bit there. And now this is the next weekend, I do believe. It took me. This is the top side, by the way. So the bottom side is now done, and now we're working on the top side, doing essentially the same thing that we did on the bottom side. Get it nice and sanded down. Starting with the orbital and moving our way up to the hand sanding blocks. Um, what was I going to mention? Other than it's just a lot of sanding. These kind of projects, though, I mean, it's always worth it in the end. And on this one, I'm going to do a 1/4 inch round over because it's the top edge, and I wanted it rounded over more than just an eighth. So the 1/4 inch will be good for a tabletop. You can do 3/8 as well if you want a little bit more of a rounded edge. And then just going back with the sandpaper again, 220. This one was done 320. So the top side I went down to 320 grit. Probably not exactly required, but I like going down 320 even if I'm putting polyurethane, just because I like going down 320 on my finished surface. Um, Polyurethane is going to cover the surface, so it's not like super essential that it has to be super smooth. But if you're doing something like an oil finish that's going to soak in and absorb into the wood, and then the wood will be the finished surface, that's where you do want to go to 320 grit every time. And then these are just the two router bits I used, that 1/8 inch and the 1/4 inch round over. And then showing this is the top side and showing the edge. This is back inside the workshop after I mostly dusted it off, blasted it off with the compressor, and now it's just about ready for the first coat. Before I do the first coat though, I always clean off the surface again with some sort of either mineral spirits or alcohol, and that just gets the rest of the dust off, because even blasting it, even wiping it off with a brush and then blasting it off with a compressor, there still will be dust that's left behind in the wood pores. And so you just go back across the surface with a rag, or in my case, a used sock, and clean it up, and it'll get more of that dust off of there. So this is the top side, and we're going to be starting the finish on the bottom side, which is now what is facing up. So this is the bottom side, and we will start the finish here and get that side done first. Coat wise, I did 3 coats of polyurethane on the bottom side, sanding in between each coat, and then the top side will eventually have 7 coats. And then sanding in between each coat is really just a very light sanding. It's not a heavy sanding that you do. It's just enough to scruff it up and kind of even make sure the surface is flat and there's no imperfections like dust particles or whatever on there. And then of course you clean it off after that and before you put the next coat on. This is just a standard polyurethane. Typically I like using spar urethane because it's a little bit more durable of a finish, but when I went to the store they didn't have any of that, which was very unfortunate. This will work just fine because this is just an indoor table, but again the spar urethane is just like a slightly more durable finish that it provides, and that's why I typically use that instead. But this is still going to be no problem, and a great finish. So yeah, here's the sanding, and I'm not showing all the sanding and all the finish work, and because again the video would be 2 hours long if I showed everything. This entire process took a little over a month, and of course that's not full-time working on it. That's in my spare time during the week and on the weekends, but it's a lot of work that goes into this that you just don't see on these kind of videos. But yeah, essentially I'm just showing a couple of the finish coats, a couple of the sanding coats, and not showing all of the coats. And so just keep that in mind. So I think this is the second or maybe possibly the third coat on the bottom, and just be very careful of any drips that happen, and because drips can cause an issue if they form and stay like on the side or on the bottom edge, and then it's just a pain that you got to deal with later as far as getting it sanded down smooth again. So I always spend a lot of time checking for drips and runs, and fixing that, because fixing that now, while it's still wet, is 1,000 times easier than fixing it later. And that's what I'm doing here, is checking for drips. There's pretty much always gonna be drips, like no matter how careful you try to be. And so that bottom side is now done. I've got it flipped over. I'm just cleaning off the top side one last time before I start with the first coat on it. It already looks just amazing to me. I love that cherry piece on the top side of the right side, where it's like mostly really dark and then it gets really blonde toward the bottom. It's really cool. So again, checking for the drips, and lots of, like I said, I think this was seven. It was either 7 or 8 coats I did on this top side, sanding in between each one. So I'm showing 1 or 2, and that's it for the video because that's enough. And you should be able to see, I've got a little flashlight that I like to use too, and you should be able to see that here coming up soon, that I'm using that to check the edges for drips. Um, for the cleaning out the brush, you always use mineral spirits or paint thinner, but mineral spirits is just the best to use. Less vapor and it works pretty well. Um, so I always use like an older. I keep several jars of it around because it can be reused over and over and over again for a while. So I keep several jars of it around. And so first, once I'm first done with the coat, I will use the older stuff, the more orangey looking stuff first, and get like some as much out of the brush as possible there, and then I'll use newer, clearer on the brush and let it soak for a little bit, and that tends to work really well. Just don't do what I did and knock over the bucket of mineral spirits that your brush is soaking in. I was doing something in the workshop and I moved it to the floor temporarily, and of course, guess what happened? I knocked it over. Surprise! So that was fun to have to clean up. So here, this is after the 5th coat. This is not after the 7th coat, but it's already looking amazing here. Um, I did 2 more coats after this, but it does look really, really good. And now we're starting to, this is after the 7th coat and after I gave it about 3, 4 days to fully, completely dry and fully cure. And right now I'm just marking where I need to drill with the Sharpie, because these are going to be for mounting the top 2. And then I put a piece of tape on the drill just so it doesn't, I know how deep I need to drill every time. Just makes it easy. And then, obviously make sure you're using the right side of the board of the surface and not accidentally doing this to the top side, because that would be not good. And vacuum out all the holes. It's essential that you pre-drill these holes, like especially on hardwoods, but like anytime you're doing something like this, you have to pre-drill the holes. Otherwise, the screws will be next to impossible to get in, and you'll cause yourself lots of issues. And I'm just screwing them in by hand. Typically for something like this, I like to do it by hand because you can kind of get a feel for how tight it is, and that to know that you're not over tightening it like with the drill. It's just, to me, it's much better to do it by hand. And now it's just a matter of building the rest of the frame, which didn't take too long. I think it took me from this point, it was about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, to get the rest of the frame on there. Or I'm sorry, that the hour and a half includes drilling the frame that I screwed into the top. So it would be less than an hour at this point. And instead of using one of those silly Allen wrenches that they send with the kit, I'm using my kit here that's got uh, Allens with sockets, and it makes it a lot easier. Yeah, I mean, the rest of this went together really well with the instructions. It was no problem at all. And again, like I said, it's a very thick steel that this was used to, or that this was built from. So I mean, it's very solid. It's once the tabletop was on there, this thing is very heavy. It's very hard to move. Like just for me trying to get it to flip it down to where it was standing back up in the workshop the right way, it was not easy to try to not get the top dinged up. Working by yourself is sometimes can be make things difficult, but I managed. Yeah, just getting the cross brace on there, and then now the instructions are saying it needs to be flipped over, and this is where you put in the shaft that goes across, that helps, that raises and lowers each side. And it was very slightly misaligned, so I just used a crescent wrench to align it. But yeah, overall, this desk build was really fun. Um, Loved doing it, loved getting it together, and it's gonna be really nice to use in my day to day office job. And I would love to make another one of these at some point. Unfortunately, I doubt I'll be able to get it as cheap as I got this one for in the future, but I'd say it's well worth the money, regardless, full price or the price I got, because it's very well built. And that's it. I'm just testing it out, and it worked pretty well. And this is just a shot of the final finished thing, finished table. Looks nice. And I wanted a hand crank table because it's just gonna last. You know, it's a lot less things to go wrong versus if you get one of those online that's got motors in it and electronics. You know, how long is that gonna last before you have to replace it? And then when you do have to replace a motor, how expensive is it gonna be? Very expensive. So I prefer this method here. Hand crank it up and down. And now I'm just kind of showing off, testing it. And I mean, it doesn't take much effort to adjust it up and down. It takes like 30 seconds, if that. It's a little bit wobbly in here, but that's just because the floor in the workshop is very uneven. The feet on it are adjustable. So yeah, here's the finished product in place, and it's beautiful. I love it. It was a great build, and very rewarding, and I'll have it for a long time. So with that, I thank everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you on the next video.